you were suggesting is that we now have a scientific body of literature that suggests that for people who are ill, getting involved in a creative process, whether it's writing poetry or painting or gardening, is actually something that facilitates the body's own natural healing process.
It's, in my view of the world, it's the most powerful mind-body tool that I've accessed for. And the main reason is that I've worked with guided imagery for 25 years with cancer patients. And that's where you picture something in the mind's eye. It used to be in the days of Symington's earliest work, white blood cells eating cancer cells. Yeah. And then it spread to the most deeply beautiful, meaningful image that a patient could have. When that image is either danced, sung, acted, drawn, it's embodied. It becomes, it crosses the membrane from the inner world to the outer world and becomes more powerful. So I look at it as a complementary therapy, integrative therapy, and in a sense a richer form of meditation imagery, not richer, more embodied form.
One of the interesting things that I've discovered, I've noticed it, and it's certainly confirmed in your book, Creative Healing, is that over the decades, more and more hospitals, now hundreds of them, have introduced art and healing programs right into their institutions, and I have to say it's made the hospitals a much more friendly, beautiful place to visit.
It's my co-author Mary Rockwood Lane, who's co-director of the program at University of Florida, Gainesville, says that she hopes that art and healing or creative healing will change the face of art and change the face of medicine. I feel this deeply in my heart, and it's something that it's beyond my understanding and beyond my visions. But right now, it's increasing around the world for the last 10 or 20 years and will continue to do so. There are magnificent programs. The program in Gainesville, which has been in existence a long time, has artists in residence, painters in residence, musicians in residence, dancers in residence, does over 100 events a month for the last 10 years. It's a wonderful situation.
Well, you know, many people may be surprised by all of this. They may be scratching their heads and saying, you know, what does art have to do with medicine? Medicine is science, and art is the opposite of science. But you point out that there was a time in human history when the healer and the artist were really the same profession.
It's, in my view of history and many others in the field, the first artist and the first healer were one. They were, even in times before the shaman or priestess, they were the person who danced in the night. They were the mother rocking the baby, singing the baby the lullaby, and then when the baby became ill, essentially singing the spirits around the baby in. So that there was a time when there wasn't any art, and that there wasn't something that was a gallery or a decoration, something sold, and there wasn't any healing, in that there wasn't an intentional another person coming to you to do something, even with herbs are probably ancient beyond time. But there was a process which is deeply spiritual and deeply, in the present day, it would be, I guess, mind, body, spirit therapy. But there was a time when something close to performance art, where a person would, Richard Katz from Harvard at the Kalahari study called Free the Boiling Energy. Free the chi, free it through dance, through song, and they'd do it all. They would do a costume, so that would be visual arts, a dance, that would be dance, music, that would be a song, a speech, that would be poetry. And whenever we talk about art and healing throughout the whole talk, we always mean the whole spectrum of the widest view of creative process. You mentioned gardening, you mentioned it's anything that stands our hair on end with creativity.
Yeah. Well, gardening is an interesting example, and it's a very personal one for you.
Yes.
I know in your book you refer to the experience that you had with your wife who died of cancer, but got very deeply involved in the artistic process during her illness, and how meaningful that was to her, even though she didn't survive.
Yeah, it was my experience with my wife. My wife had a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and she was very brave and valiant in her fight. And one of her most powerful tools, she and I both were involved in guided imagery and cancer. And we went to all the conferences at Commonweal on alternative cancer care for years, knew all the people. So it was a strange experience becoming ill with a life-threatening illness when you'd been working like this. And when she was getting a bone marrow transplant at UCSF, we put 20 feet of art on the whole wall that she faced with her bed. And her friends knew she loved gardening, and she English gardens, and they'd paint flowers for her, and there'd be huge oil paintings and altars of frogs, because she believed the frog was a symbol of transformation for her. Music constantly playing, cassette tapes during every procedure. I think it was one of the most powerful things that kept her growing and alive and wonderful during the time she was ill.
Mm-hmm. So there is a sense when we're talking about healing, in this context, we're often referring to the healing of the spirit, if not the body.
It's in the cancer world, as many of your viewers know, there's some distinction drawn between healing and curing.
Mm-hmm.
Curing is where the tumor actually shrinks on X-ray evidence. Healing is when the person's life becomes illuminated, in my way of it. I think they're parallel, and all of us in this field have our own personal beliefs about how often curing, complete tumor remission takes place. I personally believe that many of my people do that who wouldn't do it without a mind-body-spirit philosophy. But we always want quality of life improvement, chemotherapy side effect diminution, radiation side effect diminution. My wife was one of the first people at UC not to have the mouth erosion from the bone marrow transplant. She did guided imagery, art, drawings of pink membranes, of flowers, of all kinds of things along with the music. I think it without a doubt changes the person's whole life. And very rapidly, as Rachel Remen and I have talked about, the distinction between healing and curing disappears when it just becomes a process of illumination. And in the beginning, your goal may be to cure the tumor. Then your goal becomes to become brighter and become more wonderful, and then both of you merge in a sense. And the artist healer is the oldest form of healing, where art and healing were one, was a merger, it was a union between two sides of healing that came apart and two sides of art that came apart, transformation, spirit. And now this is, I think, one of the biggest doorways for it coming back.
Mm-hmm. You tell a wonderful story, and maybe I could ask you to repeat that, about how art and healing were one, and then they became separated, and they came together, I think in your story, 4 different times.
Right.
Could you tell that?
It's in our story, the art and healing were one like lovers, and they were inseparable. They were in a spinning, dancing web. And then in the beginning of time, they separated, and our metaphor is they separated to make love. They separated to see each other, to become the two. And that, in a sense, is knowledge and emotion, knowledge and meditation, the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain. And in the earliest days, we see that when they were separate, the people would come together, we say in our book, around a sacred spring. And the spirit of the dream of art and healing being one would form, and that time and space would form, and the spirit animals in our visionary dream would form. And the people would remember art and healing being one, and they would do this magical dance where their spirit vibrated. And then it separated again with the shaman becoming an external figure, a priestess, doing something to you rather than the person being alone. And then it separated again with Western science, drugs, medicine, allopathic medicine, and surgery. And when they come together, a wholeness, in my way of looking at the world, a wholeness is produced which is, I say magical. It's not magical in terms of it being New Age or hokey or something, but it's an integration in ourselves. We say, Mary says a lot, that art and healing is the easiest way to bring spirituality to medicine within a hospital program, because an artist is utterly non-threatening. They just come in and they're going to do a dance. That's not, but what happens is a child dances as an angel with leukemia, a child with leukemia. Suddenly, the spirit enters so deeply that it enters in the most, in a sense, basic visionary form. So when art and healing came apart in the beginning of time, and now they've come together in a long circular journey, like so many circular journeys come together.